It's the time of year where I dust off the old horror classics and start to wonder, what the hell happened to this series? So welcome to the first edition of Halloween. There are only a handful of villains that can make you question whether or not your underwear remains unsoiled.
I do believe I've soiled myself.
How good? I thought it was me.
But there's one that invades nightmares with ease. His bowler cap, red and green shirt, and garden shear hand. Ugh. Alright, when I put it like that, it sounds more like an elderly man tending to his roses. But I assure you, Freddy is the living embodiment of nightmares. For a series that is on the top of the list of the best Halloween movies, it has faded into movie obscurity. Which begs the question, what the hell happened to A Nightmare on Elm Street? Wes Craven's creation has seen 9 movies, a television series, a bunch of novels, comics, and video games. It all started in 1984 when Freddy debuted on the big screen, which was also Johnny Depp's first starring role. A Nightmare on Elm Street was met with rave reviews from critics, garnering the title of one of the best horror movies ever made, and basically launched New Line Cinema. Wes Craven's use of practical effects made for a terrifying film that toyed with the audience's perception of reality. It hit all the right notes. The thing I appreciate the most about this film is the way Wes Craven built the tension. It almost feels like a novelty now, where modern horror movies look to one-up each other in an ever-increasing race to be more shocking. A Nightmare on Elm Street took its time and picked its moments. It follows a group of teenagers, Nancy, Glenn, Todd, and Tina, who slowly begin to realize they are all dreaming of the same sadistic psychopath, hell-bent on killing them. The movie takes off when Rod is awoken by Tina thrashing in the bed beside him. Freddy is tossing her around in her dream, which also affects her in the real world. She hits the walls and ceiling as she is butchered in front of Rod. The teens figure out that Freddy is hunting them in their dreams, so they begin to avoid sleeping by taking anything they can to remain awake. Now this is where I have the biggest issue in the film. The actors never really seem tired. Nancy is always on edge, but she doesn't appear sleep deprived. Not like the movie claims, where she's been awake for 7 straight days.
How long's it been since you slept?
It's coming up on the 7th day.
It's not the end of the world, but it bugged me a little bit, because they could have presented a little bit more tension with their increasing angst. Then we have Rod's death, where a bedsheet creeps around his neck, then lifts him off the ground to strangle him. Now this part looks nice and creepy, and the practical effects bring it to life, but it breaks the movie's own rules. Freddy can only affect you in your dream state, not the outside world. Now if Freddy hanged him in the dream, and we see him hovering in real life, that would have worked. His body would have been left in the prison cell as this mysterious death. Nancy and Glenn become increasingly desperate to stay awake, but out of concern, Nancy's mom takes her to a sleep clinic, where Nancy is able to bring back Freddy's hat from her dream. This is when we get a glimpse at Freddy's backstory. Unable to ignore the evidence, Nancy's mom, who looks like a desperate Scully looking for a fling, tells us that Freddy Krueger was a child murderer released on a technicality. The parents, unable to handle it, hunted Freddy down and burned him alive. He's now some vengeful spirit continuing to kill the kids of the parents that burned him. Nancy decides the only way to end this once and for all is to bring Freddy out of her dream, so she goes all home alone and booby traps her entire house. Meanwhile, Glenn isn't so lucky. He gets murdered in his bed, which has a heavy flow day. Nancy pulls Freddy out of her dream and fights back with all her might, ultimately defeating him.
You can do it!
All is good. The world returns to normal. She goes to school with her friends, who are all still alive. She joins them in a convertible, and as she gets in, the doors lock, and the convertible top pops down. It's adorned with the signature design of Freddy's sweater. And as the credits begin to roll, we hear the creepy children's song that rattles between my ears. 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. 3, 4, better lock your door. 5, 6, grab a crucifix. 9, 10, never sleep again. The viewer realizes Nancy is still dreaming, and we are left wondering if she'll survive. So there it is, the first movie that set up one of the greatest horror franchises ever. It's got a few small problems, but nothing major. Following the massive success of the first, New Line Cinema rushed out 7 more movies in 10 years. With the nightmare of all nightmares left behind by Wes Craven, the sequel had endless possibilities. It was bound to be another masterpiece, right? Well, that wasn't the case. The real nightmare here is what they did to Freddy in Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddys Revenge. Oh, sweet mercy.
No mercy! No!
The only shocking thing here is the drop in quality. Wes Craven was asked to direct, but after reading the script, he bolted faster than an aging Hollywood star chasing their relevance. Freddys Revenge has no real connection with the rest of the franchise. It's basically the Fast and the Furious 3 of horror movies. It just exists. Everything you thought you knew is gone. All those rules? Non-existent. There are more holes here than a hole factory. Shut up! You try writing jokes after this movie turns your brain to mush. This movie focuses on Jesse, played as a weirdly homoerotic teen boy. And Lisa, a teen girl, if she was a plastic animatronic Chuck E. Cheese version of Meryl Streep. I have no idea if it was the director's intention for Jesse to come across this way, but he does. And if you go in expecting to see something coherent, you'll drive yourself mad. This time, Freddy is taking control of Jesse to murder people. We don't know how or why he picks certain people, like the gym teacher, he just does. Okay, this is an actual sequence in the movie. Jesse goes to a gay bar, we don't know why, he just does, and it's one that the teacher frequents. But there's no indication he was sleeping or being controlled by Freddy. He acts weird, orders a drink, and then the teacher finds him, brings him to the high school, where Jesse is forced to run laps, then shower. The teacher isn't in the same room or anything, but then we see the teacher strung up and whipped. The film is all over the place. The rules that govern Freddy taking over Jesse are incoherent. First, it happens when he's asleep, and then awake. It makes about as much sense as a platypus. It's an abomination.
Begone, thou foul bat demon!
Alright, Freddy is now in full control of Jesse. And in the throes of newfound love, Lisa decides to save him. Then, out of nowhere, these dog versions of furries come out wearing baby masks, I think. Yeah, let that image sink in. It is as weird as it sounds.
What kind of drugs do you take?
It's nothing like that.
What the hell is wrong with you?
And after this weird interaction, she ends up saving Jesse trapped inside of Freddy.
You are tearing me apart, Lisa!
So, at this point, we are supposed to think it's all over. The kids get on with their lives. They get on the bus like nothing happened. They completely forget that there was a massacre at the party they were at the night before. And out of nowhere, Freddy pops up, driving the bus, and disappears off into the desert. Ugh. Yep. There's my headache again from trying to parse through this mess.
You caused my pain!
The only thing scary about this film is that someone greenlit the script. After the soul-crushing second film, the franchise went back to basics. They enlisted the help of Wes Craven, who didn't want the original to turn into some endless franchise. He wrote Dream Warriors with the intention that would be the last film. Well, we know how that turned out. His influence shows in this film as all the rules are back. And Nancy returns, this time as a psychiatrist intern at a psychiatric hospital. This movie is more of a group ensemble. It's the Avengers for the mentally disturbed. Somehow I don't think that would take off as a comic book. When all the doctors refuse to believe the super disturbed friend's shared story of Freddy, Nancy jumps in to help battle against him. One night, when Freddy attacks Kristen, she pulls Nancy into her dream and they both escape. Nancy learns Kristen has had this ability since she was a kid. Yeesh. I can't possibly see how teens hopped up on raging hormones would abuse this type of power. But the others aren't so lucky in their fight against Freddy. We get some really interesting kills in this film, and the practical effects are on point. After the death of 2 more teens, Nancy reveals they are the last of the surviving children of the parents that burned him alive. And with the help of the discount Bill Maher doctor, Nancy convinces them to undergo group hypnosis to discover their dream powers. So in the next scene, we have the depressed Avengers discover their abilities.
You're a wizard, Harry.
I'm a what?
A wizard. And a thumping good one, I'd wager, once you trade up a little.
And then there's a shift in narrative where a nun tells the doctor how Freddy was actually born. Apparently, the mother worked in an abandoned wing of the mental institution. She explains that the mother was trapped accidentally in one of the wings with hundreds of mental patients. She was abused repeatedly, to put things mildly. The nun continues on and reveals that the only way to stop Freddy is to put his bones to rest. Apparently, after burning Freddy alive, the parents gathered his bones and hid them. Not sure how this is supposed to make any sense, since the parents set a building on fire to kill him. I mean, they would have had to wait until the fire was out and the smoldering rubble cooled, and then scavenge the site to find his remains. All without the involvement of any outside forces trying to stop them. I mean, it's not exactly an easy task to find a burned body. Not that I know from personal experience or anything. Moving on.
FBI, open up!
With her father being a part of the group that killed Freddy, Nancy goes to her dad. The doctor and her dad find his remains, but Freddy senses this and takes over his skeleton body. Remember when I said the rules returned? Yeah, ignore that here. They are totally broken. If Freddy can take back his body, why even bother going into dreams? He's not weak or anything as a set of bones. Try not to think about this too much and just move past it. Freddy pulls another one of his faceless man routines and pretends to be Nancy's father. He tricks her into getting close and then kills her. The ending is the weakest part of this otherwise good movie. It all feels silly here. The super depressed friends fight Freddy until the doctor pushes him into a hole, douses him with holy water, and drops the cross. Freddy is defeated. They hold yet another funeral, and we learn the nun was the ghost of Freddy's mom. Bum bum bum! You'd think she'd offer help a long time ago. But I guess Freddy has to reach a certain kill count before she is unlocked as a character. Then the movie ends, but we see a miniature version of Nancy's Elm Street house, and the lights flicker on. The studio clearly doesn't want to put him to rest. But it begs the question, if he wasn't defeated, why stop killing those kids? Was he just weakened? There are too many questions that we have no answers to. From what I can gather, the original script from Wes Craven was much better and darker, but the studio wanted to make it more of a carnival and dive deeper into the dreams with added dark humor. Still, it is definitely one of the better movies. Alright, that's 3 down, 6 to go. This is the end of part 1 of the Halloween Special. The next part on what the hell happened to A Nightmare on Elm Street will be out shortly. So while you wait, subscribe, share, and like the video. If you don't, you'll become Yeti food. Now scram before I change my mind.